Trustee Vice Chair Agnew, are you online?
I am.
Thank you, Trustee Vice Chair Agnew. Give me a second. Call to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting with the Halton Catholic District School Board on Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and will be also posted on the board's YouTube channel. Trustees, in order to be recognized, please use the hand up feature in Team to be automatically placed in queue. And please remember to turn your desk mics on when you speak. Also, please remember that if you speak or interrupt when you are not recognized or when you do not have the floor, your mic will be muted. Item 1.1, land acknowledgement, opening prayer, the Our Father, and the national anthem. I now ask staff to please start us off with the land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
To honor and respect the four directions: lands,
waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All of these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you. Trustee Deepu, could you please lead us with the opening prayer, the Our Father national anthem?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, please join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, as we gather here tonight for this board meeting, send down your Holy Spirit and fill our hearts as we make valuable decisions that will impact our school board community. Please join me in praying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Thank you, Trustee Deepu. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to read a statement from our board. We have received feedback from some members of our community regarding the closing prayer at our last board meeting. We appreciate this input as it helps us to reflect on our actions and their impact on the community. As a Catholic school system, we are guided by the teachings of Christ, which emphasize love, compassion, and peace for all. Our mission is not only to educate, but to nurture an inclusive community where everyone feels respected and valued. In line with our Catholic values, we are committed to praying for peace and justice throughout the world. This includes all individuals affected by conflict, regardless of their nationality or faith. We recognize the suffering of all victims of war and violence and hold them in our prayers. We acknowledge that individuals in our community may have personal connections to various global issues. It is very important to respect these perspectives while also ensuring our collective actions as a board reflect our shared commitments to inclusion and compassion for all people. We see this as an opportunity for dialogue and deeper understanding among our community members. We encourage open and respectful conversations that can help us grow together in our faith and as a compassionate community. I will be clear and emphasize that it is our collective responsibility as elected Catholic school trustees to ensure that our words, messages, and actions do not inadvertently cause harm to any member of our community. Upon review of the video recording of the closing prayer, the matter was promptly addressed internally with trustees. We commit to being mindful in our prayers to include all victims of war and violence in a way that reflects our Catholic teachings on peace, love, and justice. Thank you. We shall now move on to item 1.2, motions arising from in-camera. There was a motion from the in-camera session that will require a vote in the public session. May I have that motion projected on screen, please? I will now read the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board amend a current vendor's contract to reflect an expiration date of December 31st, 2024. May I have a mover, please? Trustee Powell. May I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Trustee O'Hearn Chanara. I shall now take it to a recorded vote. Trustee O'Hearn Chanara.
In favor?
Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor?
Trustee Kelly.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
Favor.
Trustee Saunders.
Opposed.
Trustee Chua. Trustee McGuire.
In favor.
Trustee Deepu.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
Abstained.
Trustee Powell.
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy.
Opposed.
We have 5 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. Motion carries. We shall now move on to our next order of business, which is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda, and do trustees want any item from the consent agenda removed?
Yes.
Trustee Saunders, give me a second here. Trustee Saunders, I don't see your hand up. Kindly use your hand up in future. Okay. Yes.
Can we remove 6.1.1 from the consent agenda?
6.1.1, approval of the minutes.
Yep.
Okay. Any other amendments? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Looking for a mover, please. Trustee Carabella.
Carabella.
Looking for a seconder. Trustee Saunders. We shall take this to a recorded vote. Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Kelly.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
Favor.
Trustee Saunders.
Favor.
Trustee McGuire.
Favor.
Trustee Chua, you're here.
In favor.
Trustee Deepu,
In favor.
Trustee Carabella,
Favor.
Trustee Powell, Trustee Kennedy,
In favor.
Trustee Uhan Chinara.
In favor.
So we have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. Shall now move on to item number 3, declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared tonight? Seeing none, we shall move on to our next order of business, which is presentations. Item 4.1, senior staff updates, Black Excellence Symposium. Director Klein, please introduce our presentation.
I will hand off to Superintendent Del Sordo that honor. We speak of pathways for all our students, and we speak of our call to ensure that their voices are heard and that their needs are met, and that their individual and collective pathways are honored and addressed. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Del Sordo to introduce the team he has brought to us to talk to us tonight about a very wonderful occasion that occurred recently and how it connects with our obligation, again, to our students to honor them and to ensure that they are fully alive.
Thank you, Director Klein, and through you, Chair, I am proud and very pleased to bring back to this board table our consultant Amanda Gonzalez in equity and our graduation coach for Black students, Keisha Williams. And they will share with you a beautiful day of Black excellence and what we were able to do to really capture Black brilliance, Black culture, and Black excellence to bring Black joy into our schools and really allow our students to be fully alive and to live the dignity that's within themselves. I won't delay it any further. I'll pass it on to these two.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Still February, happy Black History Month. We had the honor of organizing the Black Excellence Symposium that took place on Thursday, February 8th at Notre Dame Catholic Secondary School. First and foremost, I want to give a huge thank you to Notre Dame, to Vice Principal Amanda Morrow, to Principal Norm Roberts, and to the Department Head of Technology, Anthony Pugliese, who really helped with the logistics and organizing of this event. So we had 250 students who participate in Black student unions / Black student associations from 9 of our secondary schools. The day went from about 8:39 to 2 p.m. and it featured a keynote speaker as well as 10 different workshops that the students could sign up for. So students attended 2 different workshops, and we're going to kind of give you a highlight of some of the pieces from the symposium. Also, we had lunch provided from across the diaspora. Go to the next slide, please.
So one of the things that we thought was really important for us to do when we started our day was to lead with a prayer, our Indigenous land acknowledgement, and also an African ancestral acknowledgement. So this acknowledgement was co-created with the BSU, the Black Student Union at St. Francis Xavier, and I will just read it to you briefly. Today and every day, we wish to acknowledge our African ancestors, those indigenous to the African continent and across the diaspora. It is important to acknowledge the generations of people of African descent who are forcefully brought to this land and displaced around the world as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. We would like to honor, uplift, and empower those of African descent as we progress towards equality in Canadian communities. We want to recognize the contributions of Black Canadians and Afro-descendant Canadians whose stories are often unheard and whose voices are often silenced. It is necessary to reflect on the stories, experiences, and accomplishments of Canada's Black community, for which there are many, as well as recognize and celebrate that Black history is Canadian history.
Okay, so these are the 10 workshops that students had the option to choose from. So like I said, they had 2 different workshops that they attended, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And I really want to point out that these workshops were selected based on student voice, student perspective, student needs. These are things that many of the students within the BSA, BSU spaces advocated for in terms of what they need. So in my role, I support the various BSU and BSAs that exist in our secondary schools. And so I've been able since last year to go in and meet with kids, meet with staff to find out what's been going on, what are kids talking about, what are their look fors, what do they need, how can we support them. This year, we also established a board-wide BSU, which is called Black Empowered United Students, so BS. And when talking with the execs of that group, many of the workshops that were provided came from conversations. So whether it was, support for mental health and wellness, looking for student engagement, navigating challenging conversations related to identifying as Black, athletics, fitness, students were very, very, very vocal with what they wanted to see. And so all of these workshops were selected based on that.
And we also thought it was important for us to choose workshops and facilitators that were local. So a lot of our facilitators were from Oakville, Burlington, Milton. For instance, our 2 hairstylists, one is located in Milton and another is located in Oakville. So that also provides opportunities for students to connect with those facilitators. Some of them have even offered to provide co-op placements for students, which is really nice. I know there was one of our co-op teachers that had a student previous years ago that wanted to get into hairstyling, and without thinking, she just placed her at a hair salon. But at this hair salon, they didn't cater to Afro textured hair. So having someone now that is located in Milton that provides that service is definitely a benefit to our students.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a collaboration between departments. So looking at student success and connections to pathways, looking at special education in terms of mental health and wellness, and then of course thinking about curriculum and the importance of representation, the importance of having Black facilitators as a part of this symposium. And so we started the day off with keynote speaker Matthew Morris, who is an educator, anti-racism advocate, sorry, it's been a long day, friends, and a writer. And so his book, Black Boys Like Me, was just released, and so he's kind of doing a bit of a press tour right now. So we were lucky to have Matthew in and speak to our students to start off the day.
So one of the workshops, or one of the many workshops that the students had to choose from, was a barbershop workshop. This was facilitated by Mikey from the Groomsmen Barbershop. This was probably the only one facilitator that wasn't local. He's based out of Mississauga, not too far, but that's okay. So this workshop, students explored the art of barbering. They were guided through the fundamentals of haircutting, fades, lineups, and the importance of client relationships. Students were very engaged in this workshop. They were able to see the different tools. He made recommendations on brands that are good to purchase, especially for Afro textured hair. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do much hands-on in this one because they were located in a carpeted area. So we didn't want hair flying all over the place. So for this workshop, I think we had a maximum of 25 students in this one, which was a nice size to facilitate this workshop. And next one, please. So the next workshop was basketball. This one was supposed to be 25 students, but then it ended up growing, as you can see. This was facilitated by Coach Lennox from Tier 1 Sports. He's actually based in Georgetown, and I believe he does permits out of CTK, which is very nice. So there were some students that he saw there that they were happy to see him as a facilitator. So here they talked about the game of basketball, how Lennox started his company Tier 1 Sports. They broke down the importance of teamwork, skill building, physical conditioning. They did 3-on-3 basketball games and a little dunk off, just in time for playoffs.
And we have some feedback to share with you from the students. From the time that this presentation was submitted to earlier today, more students have given feedback. So I just want to read a quote from a student from this particular workshop. I really liked how engaged the coach was with the basketball workshop. So the Breaking Barriers session was run by Janelle and Kezia from Halton Black Voices. And we have a partnership with Halton Black Voices. They do a ton of work within our board. And so it was really wonderful to work with them as they know our community very, very well. And as I mentioned, at the BS meeting, as well as in multiple BSU and BSA spaces, there is a need for conversation, for discussion, and discussion led by Black facilitators, right? People who can speak to the experience. And so Halton Black Voices came out with a kind of podcast style session called Breaking Barriers. And so some of the topics that were discussed were looking at the N-word debate, internalized anti-Black racism, building confidence, wearing your crown, and unpacking Black excellence. And this was a really lively session. Some of the kids, in terms of the conversation, just so meaningful and so impactful. And I'd like to read another quote. I liked how in the Breaking Barriers workshop, they gave students a space to talk freely without any judgment, and didn't make anyone feel like their experience was less important. And also how they acknowledged everyone's experiences. It was a really great opportunity for students to speak to their identity, to hear from their peers, and feel not so alone in many of the experiences that they've had. Next slide, please. So we also had a community building session with Aaron Perry. And so Aaron has done a ton of work with Black youth in his community. And so he brought just a wealth of experience in terms of organizing, in terms of logistics and planning. So a really, really important session for students who are involved in BSU and BSA spaces, who are trying to plan events for their school and for their school population. Next slide, please.
So the next workshop was esports. So students were able to play 2K, which is a basketball video game. I'm not a big video gamer, but the kids were very, very enthused about this one. So this was actually led by Notre Dame's BSU. So their students were extremely excited to facilitate this. So this was the only workshop that we had that wasn't facilitated by a community member. So it was completely student-led and student-driven. One of the feedback for this one was, I liked the esports workshop because it was a good vibe and everyone was having fun.
And yeah, when I talked to the student who wanted to run this, part of it came from his passion, not only for video games, but also a really distinct memory that he had of the first time seeing a Black avatar in a video game, and how meaningful it was for him to see that representation. And so he wanted to kind of share his passion with the group. Next slide, please.
So Healthy Hair Maintenance was run by Angie from Main Solution, and this was the facilitator that has her hair salon in Milton. So it was great to connect with her. Also, again, to provide co-op options for students. So she really talked about solutions to, she talked about common habits that that are damaging to Afro-textured hair. In this, she was very hands-on. Students were able to ask questions. She gave very scientific information to the students regarding to Afro-textured hair.
Next slide. So we had another styling, a stylist come in. So we had Tiana from Valdaria. And you should know that there is like just a huge demand for stylists, I think, as Akeisha mentioned. And so this particular session was a little bit more hands-on. So talking a little bit more, not so much about healthy maintenance and care, but more about styles and certain braids and things like that. And so some of the feedback from both of the stylist workshops, I really enjoyed learning about my hair. They took my thoughts on Black excellence to a whole new level. I learned the best ways to take care of my hair, and I got to hear other people's stories.
And this workshop was really neat. Each student was given a little care package. So they got full-size shampoos, full-size hair moisturizers, which was really nice for students to take home. And I know after that weekend, students came back and said, "Oh my goodness, miss, look at my hair. I used the products that we got at the symposium." So that was really nice.
The next session was with Chanel Lobo, which was a mindfulness session. And in this session, Chanel talked about social emotional intelligence and really being able to connect with your mind, to connect with your emotions. She talked about the cognitive dissonance that is sometimes created in the very virtual world that we live in, especially with our addictions to our devices. So it was a great session for kids to kind of slow down and take a moment to connect with themselves. And here is a quote. I was simply able to enjoy it. In the mindfulness one, I was able to connect with myself more and knowing more about myself and being okay with things like speaking up for help, with things like mental health, mental illness, etc.
Next slide. So Soka Size was one of our big workshops. I know a few of our trustees were there watching and getting down with us. So this was facilitated by Ayana from Soka Size Kids. She has a Soka Size Kids, and she also does Soka Size for adults. So this was nice. She did a little mini presentation on the history of African and Caribbean dance moves. And she also led the students with step-by-step instructions and tied in dance with fitness. This was probably the most enjoyable workshop for me to watch. A lot of students that I would have never imagined came out of their shell. And they were just so happy. You can kind of see from the pictures, they were enjoying it. The music was vibrant. These are songs and music that they currently listen to. So everything was very current, and Ayana was extremely engaging. Just to read you a few feedback for this one. Soka Size was overall just very fun, and I felt togetherness as a community. I was so happy to be around so many people who identified as Black. It felt amazing. I also enjoyed when everyone was dancing in a circle. It felt nice to be able to share that moment, appreciating and representing our culture. When people were in a dance circle hyping up each other, I felt a sense of belonging. And lastly, we had a vision board workshop. So this workshop was really to have students think about their dreams, their goals, and their aspirations for 2024. One of the things that I loved about having this workshop, it really spoke to the students that weren't extroverts, the students that wouldn't get on the dance floor and participate in Soka Size, the students that weren't very athletic. This was an opportunity for students that wanted to focus on something more creative and hands-on. So this workshop was facilitated by Hazel from Big Girl Interrupted. She brought an abundance of supplies for the students. She also encouraged students to bring their own pictures. So some students had their own supplies and magazines to create their vision boards. At the end, most of our students were able to leave with a picture frame with their vision board in it and extra supplies if they needed to finish. Next slide.
So these are almost all of the contributors to the event. Special thanks to Roots, CCAH, as well as McMaster University, specifically the Faculty of Engineering, for being at the event as well. There were also a ton of prizes that were donated to this event. Gift cards, speakers, including a signed Scotty Barnes jersey from the Raptors. And the way that we gave out prizes is that during lunch, we had a QR code up for Black Excellence. And so students could nominate each other or nominate themselves for demonstrating Black Excellence and just kind of talking about what that means to them. And so we had winners from across our 9 schools.
Next slide. So for the last couple slides, we're just going to give you a little bit of feedback. I won't read all since you can also see the screen. So this is feedback from students. So we made 3 different feedback surveys, one for students, one for staff, and one for facilitators. So these ones read, I loved it, so engaging. I was able to connect and meet other Black students, very engaging and insightful. Matthew Morris was very, very, very relatable. True life content that happens to Black students in Canada and North America every single day. And I feel like it touched every spot, and it felt like he was inside my brain, basically saying my experiences, but also adding solutions and what we should do. Like, that was really cool. Sorry. They took my thoughts on Black excellence to a whole new level. I learned the best ways to take care of my hair, and I got to hear other people's stories.
And then I just want to read a couple more that came out in the last couple of days. Honestly, I loved how no one was judging and everyone was free. I liked how I felt I wasn't the only one who had experienced some of the things I had experienced, and I liked how I was surrounded by people who looked like me. We need to do this more. When we have young Black speakers, it encourages our students to acknowledge that we can do better, and there's so much support all around us. And lastly, it felt very empowering to see so many Black students come together and have a safe space to speak about our experiences and have the opportunity to become a bigger community. I felt like I belonged, and seeing how beautiful everyone was made me realize that all Black people are so beautiful and have so many different shades and hair types and textures.
Next slide, please.
So we had some wonderful feedback from staff. You can see here, the students were so engaged and loved being in a space where Black excellence was thriving. Students felt affirmed and loved connecting with other Black students from across the board, as well as interacting with other staff. They loved the workshops they chose and appreciated the variety provided. It definitely helped bring our BSU together, and they're inspired by hearing the different BSUs hearing what the different BSUs are spearheading. A great day of collaborating, community, and celebrating Black culture. Overall, great job. Love the day. Everyone continues to talk about how much they enjoyed it and how great it felt to be surrounded by Black excellence. Students were engaged throughout the whole day. Many students did not want to leave when it was time. Students were so happy to have an event with other BSUs at other schools. Many of them were already asking when the next event is, and community building opportunities were so powerful.
And the feedback from, sorry, next slide. The feedback from staff and facilitators were pretty parallel. The overall experience was fantastic, and students' feedbacks was overwhelmingly positive. There were so many great breakout session topics. Students felt torn on which one to attend, and kids that didn't attend had mad FOMO, so fear of missing out. A suggestion is to expand the symposium to a weekly event, 4 days instead of 1. I can see every single Black HCDSB student attending this next year.
And then we just have a little video that Akeisha put together that kind of captures just a little bit of some of that energy.
This year, blessing, money, testimony. Go to follow you they go. This year, good news. Giant plenty bonding. Go they follow, 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 you can go. Everything I've been wanting, manifesting from my life. Everything you've been wanting, manifesting for your life. Even before you call, you don't answer prayer. My papa is too sure, you don't fit for your hand. Even before you call, you don't answer prayer. My papa is too sure, fit for your hand. Everything I've been wanting, for my life. Everything you've been wanting, manifesting for your life. Everything I've been wanting, manifesting for my life. Everything you've been wanting, manifesting for this year.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Sure looks like a fun symposium. And with that, I shall now open up the floor to trustees for asking questions or comments. Up first is Trustee Chua. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I just want to say the biggest thank you to both of you. Both of you are from St. FX. Unfortunately, Ms. Gonzalez, you've left us for the board. But this does show the powerful women that come from St. FX. I see a pattern. Like, you guys are making ripples of effect. Sorry. But yeah, you guys are the best, genuinely. And Miss Akisha, I don't know if you hear this enough. There have been so many students that approached me in the hallways, my friends and my classmates, or I just hear it when I'm passing by through my classes. The impact you have made in our school is absolutely insane. I don't know if you hear it enough. I think you should be getting praise every single day. The amount of students that are inspired by your work, the amount of students that, want to pursue maybe their university or college degree, where before, they were on the bridge of not doing that and not exploring their true passions. Like, you have sparked inspiration and you have sparked the dedication of our students to achieve the best that they can. And I'm lucky enough every single day to see your work in our action in our schools. Those lockers are gorgeous, by the way, I've been meaning to tell you. And that ancestral acknowledgement, like, you are just doing amazing work. Both Ms. Gonzalez and Ms. Akisha, I just want to say thank you to both of you because you are both powerful women that we need to see more on our board. But yeah.
We're just doing the work. Black excellence is alive and well at this board. The kids are thriving. It's just about providing opportunities, the right opportunities.
Thank you. Up next, Trustee Huanchanara.
Thank you. So that's a very hard act to follow, Trustee Chua, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So just a couple of comments, and thank you, ladies, and everyone that participated. The enthusiasm, you can feel the energy. You can see the energy coming off those pictures. So well done, and it looks like it was a huge success. And just what keeps resounding, if we stop talking long enough and just listen to people, we might learn a lot more than continuing to hear our voice, because you said the voice from the participants was amazing, right? They wanted to have a voice and speak, so well done, and that resounds in my mind. I'll stop talking a little bit more and listen a little bit more. How's that? Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Huanchanara. Trustee Powell, you're up next.
Speaking of talking. No, I just wanted to say thank you. I had an opportunity along with Vice Chair Agnew to pop in, and we didn't want to leave. We both had to go back to work, but it was quite an experience and powerful to see that many students together that were so engaged and having fun. I mean, I have teenagers. They don't have a lot of fun at school. And to see that, it was really nice. And I love your comments. I'm going to cry when I start reading them. But it's like you said, like we've listened. So to create that sense of belonging, kudos to you and your team for doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Powell. Thank you for making the time to drop in there. Up next, Trustee Deepu.
I just want to echo everyone's words so far. I was watching this whole presentation and I'm beyond excited for all the work that you're doing in our board, especially for our students to feel, included and accepted. And not only that, but to also feel comfortable and feel at home almost at school, which is really hard to do. And I I especially loved how you designed those workshops and planned everything so that you could cater to all the students' interests rather than, just like focusing on one specific aspect, like let's say hair care. So I love how you like planned this, and I hope for the best in the future.
Thank you, Trustee Deepu. Up next, Trustee McGuire, you have the floor.
Yeah, just to echo everybody else's statements, but I really loved seeing all the joy and the Black excellence that was exemplified in the symposium and stuff. Like Trustee Chua said, I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I really hope that you will be able to continue this hopefully next year. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands up, but I see Trustee Vice Chair Agnew, you have your camera on. Do you want to say something? I know you're in a warm place there. Vice Chair.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I don't want to belabor. Thank you, Trustee Powell, for covering off many of the sentiments that I shared. We did not want to leave. We did, in fact, want to dance, but we were a little bit. We didn't want anyone to have to see our poor dancing moves. But it was very inspiring. The sentiments that are being shared tonight were very, very evident. If you were there in person, you could feel the energy, you could feel the sense of belonging. It was a truly tremendous day. So hats off to everybody who planned it. I was glad that I made time in the day to attend, because it definitely, it changes you a little bit every time you are able to participate in something like this. So thank you to everybody. It was a fantastic day, and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Vice Chair Agnew. So with that, I have nothing else left to say, but I want to thank Superintendent Del Soro, Ms. Akisha Newton-Williams, and Amanda Gonzalez, and your team for the presentation and for the wonderful work you do in our schools. And we look forward to seeing more of such symposiums and fun symposiums. Thank you so much. Our next order of business is delegations. We have no delegations today. We move on to consent agenda items. There is one item which was pulled out, item 6.1.1. And so we have several policies, action items, 6.1.2.1, 6.1.2.2, 6.1.2.3, and 6.1.2.4. We have a bunch of noted items. There will be a single motion to approve the action items. There will be no discussion, and there will be no discussion on the noted items as well. So I will now read the motion. Resolve that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve consent agenda items 6.1.2 on February 20th, 2024 as submitted. May I have a mover for this?
I'll move it.
Moved by Trustee O'Hearn Janara. Looking for a seconder, please. Trustee
I can second
Powell.
it.
Sorry, Vice Chair, I only got a seconder. I know there's a delay. So with that, I shall take it to a recorded vote. Trustee Kelly.
Favor.
Trustee Murphy.
Clarification, we're voting on the consent agenda items, less
except
the ones that were removed.
Except
yeah, I know, 6.1.
6.1.1.
Got it.
Yeah.
In favor.
Favor? Trustee Saunders? Favor. Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee McGuire?
In favor.
Trustee Deepu?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn Janara?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
So we have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. We shall now move on to next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Item 6.1.1 was requested to be removed from the consent agenda. We are going to be talking about that. So that's item 7.1 now. Minutes of the February 6, 2024 regular board meeting is in your package. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? I believe Trustee Saunders, you pulled it out. You can speak to it.
Yeah, I believe the minutes are incomplete, given that your comments today referred to a discussion that happened after the meeting. So I think they're incomplete without that discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. If you go to our bylaws under minutes, bylaw 15.3, contents of minutes. It states very clearly what needs to be in the bylaws. In the minutes. Second thing, minute starts with the call to order, ends with the adjournment of the meeting and closing prayer. So the minutes are accurate as presented. Thank you, Trustee Saunders. Any further comments on the minutes? Thank you. With that, I shall ask for a mover for the minutes. Trustee, can I have a mover for the minutes? Trustee Powell moves. Looking for a seconder, please. Seconder for the minutes.
I can second it.
Sorry, Vice Chair. There is a delay. It's seconded by Trustee Ohan Chanara. With that, I shall now call the vote on item 7.1, minutes of the February 6, 2024. Item 7.1. Trustee Murphy.
Opposed.
Trustee Saunders.
Opposed.
Trustee Chua.
In favor.
Trustee McGuire.
In favor.
Trustee Deepu.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
Opposed.
Trustee Powell.
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy.
Opposed.
Trustee Ohan Chanara.
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Kelly.
In favor.
And Trustee Duarte is in favor. We have 5 in favor, 4 opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. We move on to our next order of business, which is action item. We have one action item, which is 9.1 school year calendar. We shall use the 3-minute rule, 3 minutes for questions, 3 minutes for debate, and then she'll call the vote. Item 9.1, 2024-2025 school year calendar. Superintendent Kroll, please speak to this item, and then I will read the motion. Superintendent Kroll.
Certainly, and through you, Mr. Chair, and just to be clear, I'm presenting this on behalf of Superintendent Donalfo and the calendar committee. I can take no credit for the good work that was done on this, except just to bring it forward to you tonight. As was noted in the information report previously brought to the board, this is the consensus for the calendar that we submitted to the ministry for final approval. It was done in cooperation with the calendar committee, which represents a wide variety of HCDSP stakeholders, as well as with our coterminous board, in order to sort of maximize transportation services budget to ensure that we're not sort of carrying undue costs for transportation. So I'll just stop there and certainly can answer any questions the trustees may have to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Superintendent Kroll. I shall now read the motion. I get it moved and seconded, placed on the table, and then we'll go through the questions and debate. May I have a motion for this? Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2024-25 school year calendar as presented. May I have a mover, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Trustee Ohan Chanara. Looking for a seconder. Trustee Powell. Can we have the calendar up on screen? Can we have the school year calendar? Thank you. Trustees, I shall now open up question time. Trustees, do you have questions on the calendar? Please put your hand up. Seeing no questions, we shall now open up debate time. Do we want to debate, trustees? Nobody? Seeing none, I shall call the vote on item 9.1, school year calendar. It was moved by Trustee Ohan Chanara, seconded by Trustee Powell. Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee McGuire?
Favor.
Trustee Deepu?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell?
Favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohan Chanara?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly,
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. The school year calendar is approved.
Point of order, Mr. Chair,
Uh,
and I could be confused.
Trustee Honchinara, state a point of order, please.
The agenda item 6.2.2, the appointment of Representative Oxta. It's a noted item, but there's a blank there. So is that not an action item? And it's going to be at the next meeting?
Oh, yes, you're correct, Trustee Honchinara. So at this meeting, it's an information.
Okay.
At the next meeting, it will be an action.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We shall now move on to our next order of business is staff reports. We do not have staff reports. We move on to information reports. Director's annual report 11.1. Director Klein, please present your 2022-2023 annual report.
Thank you, Chair. And I would also want to give some thanks today to the staff of our Strategic Communications Department for putting this together, in particular, our manager, Andrea Swindon. This report encompasses really everything we do. And although it's called a director's report, I'd be remiss in really taking that credit. This reflects the work that's done by nearly 6,000 staff in this board. And it's been over the last school year, so the 22-23 school year at several sites and over those 12 months. I draw your attention to the cards that you have before you, and there's a QR code that is on those as well, and you can access the report through that. The report, as I said, spans the 2022-2023 school year, and of course it reflects the MYSP that goes back a few years and does not reflect obviously the one that we just approved a short time ago. We're going to walk through each of the strategic priorities. I'm just going to highlight a few of the, I think, the highlights I'd like to share. And you can understand, too, that with those strategic priorities of achieving, believing, belonging, and the foundational elements that help with them, there's more than 1, 2, 3, or 4 ways to divide this pie. And in fact, we think of it almost as a braiding or some form of crochet that weaves through. Something that is designated as a belonging could readily have been looked through the lens of believing or achieving. So these are really arbitrary in the way we do these. And I'll skip along through them. And again, you are perfectly aware of the key stats or numbers with this board. And whether it is yourself or someone else visiting our site, they'll be able to look and see that of course, the MYSP is something that is the result of trustee deliberation and trustee creation. And of course, they're highlighted at the start, and then we'll skip through to the 4 components of this. You might want to buckle up. I hope you took your Gravol, because I'll be going through this fairly quickly as well. You will note that for each of these priorities, we will highlight the strategic plan monitoring survey results that depending on which priority it is, I think we have 6 questions in some, 2 or 3 in others, that they reflect over the years. We do these every year. The resonance with our community, with staff, and with our parents and other community members of the MYSP. First, within our achieving category is really student excellence at the HCDSB. And we'll highlight a few things. One in particular is the annual Student Awards of Excellence ceremony that some of you were at last spring. Again, it's not to diminish anything. I'll skip through them, all these wonderful faces of achievement throughout our board. One of the highlights too is our Spirit of Inclusion Award recipients. And obviously there's a highlight for one of our top students, who was an IB graduating student as well. And highlight of that particular program. Annually, there are Governor General Bronze Medal Awards, and we had several students highlighted here with grades that I think certainly put this person to shame at that age. The achievement goes beyond academics, within physical education and sports, outside even the school system itself. Beyond that, we have students who are shining in areas of business and entrepreneurship, innovation. Highlight again is St. Francis Xavier's DECA team, who succeeded last year. And of course, you're well aware that we've no slouches this year, 2 in our board with DECA. The Bay Area Science and Engineering Fair, sometimes called BASF, can highlight the award winners there, and our award winners are here. Their pictures. And again, every one of these is a result of students who have been nurtured by staff members, nurtured by the community they belong to and the families from which they spring forth. STEAM, as you're aware, is a key area in our board, a priority, and something that I think highlights us as opposed to many other boards. Many of the trustees have been in schools as well. Notre Dame Award, a Notre Dame student was awarded the Schulich Leadership Scholarship. This is Tiana. Her mother, in fact, is one of our VPs at our board. And eyes pop at that award. Then one student, again, who I would like to say is a Hollywood animator. Technically he is, I guess, since he was part of Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Got 2 thumbs up from me. In terms of our believing, we have certain goals. We had feedback from our stakeholders in terms of the resonance with them. Theological theme that we began just over a year ago, again, undergirds all of this, and that, of course, comes from the book of Micah. What does the Lord ask of you? And it's part of a series of themes that will go through the next few years. Justice being this year, and kindness next year, walking humbly. We had a student receive the Catholic Student Award. This comes from the Catholic Educational Foundation of Ontario, which is connected with the Bishops of Ontario. Catholic Student Award went to Ava Winhofen from Bishop Redding. You're well aware of the other activities that we mark our calendar year with. One of the big ones, of course, Keeping Christ in Christmas. Many award winners. We had some here a short time ago. This goes back nearly a full year. See somebody poking his head out in the back. And of course, some of those end up creating art that becomes part of our Christmas card sales as well. And we had many of those put in terms of selections. Of course, we selected 3 of them, and that helped us raise money. I think about $6,000. Here we are, $6,000 to support families in our community through the St. Vincent de Paul Society. DPIC, again, the voice of parents in our board, also the voice of parents in our board in terms of our faith development and reflecting our gospel beliefs here. And a highlight from the past year was a CPIC event called Opening the Doors of Advent. Tiny Home Project. I know some trustees were at Notre Dame to take a look at the work that students and staff were doing there, again, in coordination with Habitat for Humanity and other businesses to help out as well, to create a tiny home. There's a connection, of course, to one of our First Nations a little further north into, I think, Grey Bruce. And that was a great opportunity, again, for volunteers, for charity, for learning in terms of pathways, of course, and for our connection with other community organizers. Catholic Education Week is a long time designated opportunity for all Catholic schools and boards in the province of Ontario to celebrate who we are and what we are and the gift we are to the province of Ontario. That we managed to do more with less, and that we managed to be the incarnation of Christ in our province. And the theme, of course, last year was "We are many, we are one." And that does reflect, I think, the focus in our church of synodality, of that responding and calling, and that listening with an open heart and an open mind, and other areas as well. The Journeying with Jesus, it does mark a highlight, I think, of Catholic Education Week. Many of you remember that as well, the site of that, and of course that was undergirded by our liturgy that all schools were connected with. And again, there's a link there for people who would like to see a little more about that. Catholic schools in the province of Ontario for generations, I think, have led the charge in terms of social justice and in terms of bringing in money and harnessing the energy and the creativity of our schools and our communities to help those who have less, certainly answering the gospel call and the call that we'll all be judged by, how we respond to those in need. Couple of highlights, but these activities occur day in and day out at all of our schools and all of our sites, including here at the CEC. Again, not to diminish anybody else, but a couple of highlights would be Assumption's Crusading for Cans food drive. And Loyola's Loyola lasagna campaign. I don't know how I missed that, but I will be there again. Even the veggie one. Again, as you go through it, you're overwhelmed by the fact of how these could all connect. What we just went through in terms of believing, belonging, of course, stretches through that connection through charity or connecting to those on the margins or who could potentially be at the margins is at the heart of what we do in Catholic schools, and I would argue in all schools. So embracing and ensuring that those with a weaker voice or who might be unheard are heard. And that call to be ministers of presence with all of those. Again, some highlights would be the focus last year, particularly on grade 5 in terms of our engagement with Indigenous education activities. And of course, we had activities at Country Heritage Park in Milton and others throughout the year to ensure that the blessings and the gifts of our Indigenous communities and the history that we have here in Canada are understood by our students so that we can be grateful for the past and we can forge a more just and more fair future, one that's based on common respect. Some of you would remember this evening, again, up in Milton, the Indigenous cuisine and culture. We had some great speakers. We had Wa Bryce, who came here for that and gave a great talk. And of course, the food was awesome. Belonging has as one of its engines of change and of sustenance our Human Rights and Equity Department. And again, to highlight just a few, and it's not to highlight and say that this department does more than others, but this is certainly something to be very proud of. And all our departments within curriculum and special education and other areas constantly work to ensure that our staff have the skills and the dispositions that are refined and honed so that they can best meet the needs of our students. But again, just to highlight, over 58 training sessions for staff, nearly or over 5,000 staff trained with regard to a lot of the key components of human rights and equity. And I have not been to any of those training sessions where there's not a connection again to our gospel mission and other missions as well. The Catholic mindset is one that is so that we can integrate all of these. People talk about Catholic math. Yes, there is Catholic math. There is a way of looking at all these things with that mindset of Catholic educators. Celebrating our friends within the Islamic community. A good example from Assumption again. Beautiful photos, honor our brothers and sisters who are within our community and within our schools. Bishop Redding pilots a history course about the African Canadian experience. Lots of connections to the community with that as well, and a good example of how, with regard to ensuring that the voices of our Black students are heard, that we cannot do that alone. In Black History Month, again, we say that with a lot of humility, knowing that's not just a month, that is something that is to be honored and to be refined throughout the year. We all are aware as adults and as parents and as educators that the concerns and the issues and the importance of mental health have, if we thought they were important before COVID, well then during and after COVID, we are much more aware of how important it is. It's very hard to learn, very hard to teach and do our jobs if we're not balanced and healthy and whole and full. And so that's why beyond Mental Health Week, the concern for mental health is important throughout the year. But we did want to highlight that. And again, to highlight that it's not something that is disconnected from other partners in the community and other partners in the province, but those allies of ours as well. But Pride Month, again, sometimes a time of contention, sometimes a time of discussions within our walls and outside of our walls, but it is something that is important in our board and something that is important in the province of Ontario. And that one phrase, "we are all wonderfully made, steeped in scripture," is really at the heart of what we do, and is at the heart of what we do in terms of even how we honor that and how we ensure that all our students and staff feel safe and accepted, and that there is joy and that there is wonder within that. Our life skills students within the secondary schools are those students for whom the path forward sometimes might not be as clear as others, and yet the board has worked hard to ensure that that path is mapped out, that it is maneuvered with families and with the community and with all hands on deck within this school board as well. And again, some highlights of some of our high schools, one in particular, where we can talk about job lunch and tons of connections with the province and with the community as well. Some of you might remember the SIA showcase evening. Again, a world of wonders in terms of what we're doing as a society in terms of technology for our students, and it only gets better every day. And of course, for parents and for families, we have, in this case, again, an example of someone from outside of our board being there to give a sense of not what the limits are, but what the possibilities are in terms of tools that can help our students learn and what our students deserve to have to learn, including moving forward our great allies within the board, and that is our SEAC and the work that they've done to ensure that we're engaging parents. And again, this is an example of work they've done within gifted, the exceptionality of giftedness. Some of you would recall that from last year as well. We have staff that have dedicated their lives to education, one form or another. We say, I like to think of them all as educators, whether it's someone who's a custodian or whether it's someone who's a department head or whether it's someone who's in any other occupation here at the school board, that they have heeded a call to work with students and to help them become fully alive. And many of you are aware then of the celebration of our staff as they reach those milestones in their life when they would move on to other items rather than getting up at 6 or 7 or 8 in the morning to get to a school or a site. foundational elements we sometimes think, again, as by its nature, by its definition of foundation or something that undergirds what we do. And this is not shameless fawning, but the highlight, I think, for that would be last year. It seems for many of you to be more than a year, I'm sure, or less, but it was only just over a year ago that we had a new board created. And some of you might or might not remember that evening just over a year ago where we had our inaugural board meeting as well. And again, that was a great time of celebration and a great time to recognize the importance of our trustees now and traditionally in Catholic schools and in publicly funded schools in the province of Ontario in terms of setting direction and ensuring accountability. That's certainly before you guys got there. Superintendent Merrick will, in a report coming up very shortly, or an update, again, give us a sense of where we are with some of our schools. So some of you will be kind of shocked to recall that less than a year ago, this is where we were. Like, it was just flat ground in some of these areas. But I can tell you that there are many boards growing in the province, but not all. Some have kind of stalled in terms of growth. So this board right now is digging and it's welding and it's putting things together in light of again, the growth that we've had in this region of Halton. So there's a few highlights again, and pictures of many of us digging in not so cold weather and then colder weather as well. And again, we have just some quick facts about, I think was something we'd be proud of in this board. You don't see it other boards as well. It's pretty quick turnaround in terms of how we put a shovel in the ground, and then we have a school built, and we're looking forward to, in the fall, having some of those ribbons cut for new schools and blessings of new schools. And the school climate survey, of course, is something that we do on an annual basis as an opportunity to gather data to see how we are doing, how we're doing from different voices perspective, so that we can see where our gaps are, see where our strengths are, and then map the road ahead. And you're well aware of those results, but there is a link to all of them as well, because that has been reported on numerous occasions, whether it's staff or whether it's students. This is really important data. And of course, in terms of where we're going with growth, we have growth of our IB program. A little more information about that. And then we've grown in terms of our senior leadership as well. We're very lucky, again, as the school year ended, to announce that we had Superintendent Jack Caldera appointed, and that we had Superintendent Skripik appointed as well. We'll be hearing more from him in a little while later. And of course, this board obviously runs on God's grace and money, but it does also run on people that come from a variety of backgrounds and diverse experiences. And we are growing, and the refreshing of our team is important. So over that last year, we had 577 new hires. Get a sense of where they landed. Financial information, when all is said and done, there were revenues of just over 571 million, and there were expenditures of just over, 471 million. So in conclusion, I do want to thank all those who helped put this together along with me, and to thank everyone who really contributes to what is a report on everything we do here, and how we meet those priorities that were set 7 years ago by a group of trustees. And they do resonate today, and we do know how they're echoed in the MYSP that we're launching and embarking on over the next few months and years. So thanks to all of those who helped, again, contribute in any way to this as well. And I hope you do see it as things that are complementary, not divided, but this is one fairly straightforward way of looking at what we've done over the last year in terms of our MYSP. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Klein. I shall now open up the floor to trustees for any questions on the Director's annual report. Trustees, do we have any questions for Director Klein? Trustee Ohan Chinara, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank yourself, Director Klein, and your staff. What a wonderful report. It's exhausting to read through this. It feels like an exhausting year, and I didn't do any of it. So congratulations to your staff. I'm always very proud of the reports and you know, all of our schools and our staff and our children that attend. So well done. Good job.
Thank you, Trustee Ohan Chinara. Any other trustees have any comments? Trustee Kennedy, you have the floor.
Just a quick question. I saw that we had some 56 schools, 5,677 employees. I'm just wondering, what number of that is teaching staff? Do we know just approximately of the 5,600 employees we have our teaching staff?
I thought you were going to ask me to
Director Klein.
Thank you, Chair. Anybody want to give a guess? Aaron? I don't have a straight answer for you, Trustee Kennedy. We could work on that. Okay. No, I'm not. No.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. You have further questions? Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Thank you, trustees. And again, Director Klein, thank you and your staff for the wonderful work done in the last year and over the past years. This past MYSP was in place for 7 years, which is unusually long, and we have done very well, and we have good successes in our 3 pillars of achieving, believing, and belonging. There's still much work to be done with our new multi-year strategic plan from 2024 to 2028, which is just being rolled out, Director Klein. We shall stay positive and we shall stay focused on the plan alone and strive for excellence and bigger successes in our new pillars of achieving, believing, belonging, and becoming. Keeping Christ in the center of what we do for the success of all our students at HCDSP. So thank you. With that, we shall move on to item 11.2, construction report. Superintendent Merrick, please present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, we have the construction report for February. So I think some of the photos are up there. They're a little small, but first up, we have Milton number 3, or the new St. Kateri Secondary School. You can see one of the photos there. I can't tell.
Could you expand
we're very close to completing the roof now. The east section of the roof is complete. The west is also complete. And then we're just have the atrium in the center and the mechanical room on the east section left to complete. So we're about 90% watertight on the roof now. And with the good weather this week, we should be able to wrap that up this week as well. Mechanical and electrical are very far along on the interior. And then we're moving on to the building envelope. You can see a lot of the windows are in. They're doing the vapor barrier around the windows right now. And then the insulation, the spray insulation will happen probably in the next couple of weeks. Moving in the next month, mechanical and electrical will continue, and then we'll be on to interior finishes. So they're already starting to set up to do the drop ceilings in a lot of the spaces, and then painting and flooring will happen over the next month as well, or start over the next month. Next up, we have Milton number 9 Elementary School. You can see from the photos here, a lot of the windows and curtain wall going in now. Painting's already happening, and the roofing is nearly complete except for the front butterfly roof. The deck is on, but the roof membrane isn't on yet. But that'll happen over the next month, and finishing up all the roofing, like I mentioned. Curtain wall, there's a few pieces left to finish off, and then we're on to interior finishes as well throughout the next couple of months. And then lastly, we have Oakville number 4. This is the furthest along. You can see a lot of the brick veneer, and the exterior is complete. Mechanical is fairly far along as well. They're even on the drywall now in the interior, and a lot of flooring and tile is in place. So over the next month, we'll be looking at lighting, finishing up some HVAC, and then wrapping up the interior finishes as well. But happy to take any questions that trustees may have on those 3 construction projects.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. We have a speaker here. Trustee Saunders, you have the floor.
Yeah, just a comment for Superintendent Merrick. I was at Mass at Mary Mother of God on Sunday. Father Jerry came over and grabbed me, and he just wanted to let you know, the board know how impressed he is with how quickly the building is coming along and its design, and he's looking forward to the naming process. So just some positive feedback.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. Trustees, do we have further questions or comment for Superintendent Merrick? Seeing none, Thank you, Superintendent Merrick, for your presentation and your updates, and thank you for visiting St. Kateri Parent School Council and providing an update to Parent Council. Thank you for that. With that, we shall move on to item 11.3, HDSB suspension data, including disproportionalities. Dr. Collymore and Superintendent Cordero will present. Go ahead.
Hi.
Sorry, Dr. Collymore.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Chair. I'm introducing the report on behalf of the two offices that co-authored this report, the Office of Safe and Accepting Schools and the Office of Research. And Nick is here to walk you through the methodology and through the results. But really the purpose of the result is twofold. The first is to provide you, the Board of Trustees, with a summary of the suspensions given to Halton Catholic District School Board students. And the second is to provide an update using the data from the student census as it relates to historical suspension data. And so a little bit of background, before presenting the information about disproportionalities on suspensions, it became evident that we first needed to present to the board information about HCDSB suspensions in general. So the Office of Safe and Accepting Schools records data from all of the safe school instances, and this process is outlined for you in the report. Appendix A of your report also contains the number of suspensions by grade as noted in our student information system for the last 2 school years, 2021-22 and 22-23. Recall that the data that was collected from the student census was intended to help us better understand the students that we serve and also to verify and assess any systemic disparities that are affecting our students' experiences and outcomes while they're here at HCDSB. So the second half of our report really examined the disproportionalities of student health, well-being, and engagement using suspension data from Power School. I'll turn it over to Nick now, and he'll walk you through the methodology and through the results.
Okay, thank you. So, as Dr. Collymore mentioned, this data that we're presenting here today is the product of working with Superintendent Cordero and his team, as well as taking the data from Power School, which is our student information system. The data that we're presenting you today is from 2021-22 school year and the 2022-23 school year. The first table that you see here is the number of suspended students by grade and school year. Just to note that we divided it up into panels, so the percentages you see there are the percentage of elementary or secondary, respectively. You'll see when you look at this that when we see elementary numbers, I don't think that surprising that the numbers get larger as the grades go up. So it really peaks in grade 8. Which makes up 43% of suspensions in 22-23. At the secondary panel, we see that grade 9, 10, and 11 have around about a third each in the 22-23 school year, and then it drops a little bit for grade 12. If you scroll down a little bit to table 2, the data presented here are the numbers from Power School divided up in order to see how often students who were suspended were suspended. And so what we're looking at here is the frequency of suspensions per student. And as you can see in both elementary and secondary panels, the vast majority of students are only suspended 1 time when they're suspended. Though we do see a number of students, about 14% in the secondary panel last year, who are suspended twice, and this drops quite sharply down to 4% at 3 times, 3% at 4 times, and 2% at over 5 times being suspended. As Dr. Collymore mentioned, this is the sort of descriptive component of our analysis, but we also linked the suspension data that we took from Power School to the student census data. And what we're presenting you today is the student disproportionality analysis of this. And if you'll recall, the disproportionality analysis is a measurement of over or under representation of students within those suspended. So if you go to the next page, just a little reminder, because I've presented this to you before, but what this is a requirement from the Ontario Anti-Racism Data Standards for how we present and analyze the data. And what it is the percentage of students from a particular group within those who are suspended divided by that percentage of students amongst the total population. Disproportionality index of more than one means there's overrepresentation. So it means that the students are suspended more often than we would expect given their percentage of the overall HCDSP population. A disproportionality index of 1 means there's perfect representation. That's the sort of ideal that we would like to see. And a DI of less than 1 means that students are underrepresented, so they're suspended less often. On the next page is just an example of the types of charts you're going to see on the next page. To be aware of the pattern here is the further away from 1, the greater the disproportionality, the more sort of severe the index is. Orange represents overrepresentation, blue underrepresentation. So on the next page, we've presented you with the disproportionality indices for race, disability, gender identity, and religion. These categories were chosen because they were all statistically significant, meaning that the differences between the groups was not likely to be a product of chance, but is rather a result of something within the group and differences between the subgroups that you see here. Our first chart, which shows race, shows a clear pattern of overrepresentation of our Black students within those who are suspended, with a disproportionality index of 1.8. We have a similar but smaller overrepresentation of Middle Eastern and multiracial students at 1.5 and 1.6. And our Latino and Southeast Asian students at 0.9 and 1.1 are right about proportional to their percentage of the overall population. We have a noted negative disproportionality, meaning that they're underrepresented for our South Asian students and less so for our white students. When we look at disability, which is the next chart down, we see that students who identify as having a disability make up an overrepresentation amongst those suspended with a disproportionality index of 1.5. And students who identify as not having disabilities or who are unsure about their status are right about equal to what we would expect. So they have a proportionate representation. Turning to gender identity, we see a very stark difference there between girls and boys and those who have additional gender identities, with female identified students as being 0.6, so underrepresented amongst those suspended, boys at 1.4, and those with additional gender identities at 1.3. Finally, there's the religion chart, and now you'll note that there's not as much of a difference here, but there was a statistically significant difference. And we see a slight overrepresentation for students who identify as Christian but not Roman Catholic, and about proportional for those of additional religions, Muslim students, and Roman Catholic students. We have a notable underrepresentation for students with no religious or spiritual affiliation. So thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Trustees, do we have questions for Dr. Collymore, Dr. Lombardo, or Superintendent Cordero? I see. Trustee McGuire, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through your chair, thank you to the Department of Research for developing this report. It was really important to see this and stuff, and given how suspensions can have a huge impact on a student's experience in school and even post-secondary, and with the disproportionalities we have, what can the board do to kind of, I guess, like change these disproportionalities so that we can work towards one day where we might not see these disproportionalities? I know that's a big question, but thank you.
Dr. Collymore?
So thanks for the question through you, Mr. Chair. In the report, we do conclude by saying that, you know, in terms of our next steps, we will be using these results to inform our student achievement plan and the other school improvement planning efforts that are being done to date. In addition, we have shared these results with various departments and offices within the central office, and it's our intention to help for them to use these results to help support training and targeted supports that are also going to be done at the school level. In addition, through the Office of Safe Schools, additional training will also empower staff to be intentional when they are reviewing and considering equity factors that are influencing decision-making. And it is our hope that, you know, these ongoing training efforts will be evaluated so that we can investigate their impact on these disproportionality suspension rates. So it's our intention that once we do and engage in more training, then we will rerun these suspension disproportionalities with the hope of seeing an impact such that they are reduced and closer to that 0-1 number.
Thank you. Trustee McGuire.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Up next is Trustee O'Hunchanada. You have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and to Dr. Collymore, Superintendent Cordero. Kind of along the same lines, but what are the next steps? Are there any changes, any tweaks to the safe reporting tool that needs to happen, or are we confident that that tool is capturing everything that we need?
Superintendent Cordero or Dr. Collymore would like to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will ask Anthony to respond to this one.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and to Trustee O'Hearn-Sornota. We continue to revise and expand the reporting, the Safe Schools reporting tool, particularly in the area of human rights and equity. We've expanded the tool originally of a couple of years ago, where we capture the primary code under Ontario Human Rights grounds, and now we're looking at those intersectionalities amongst additional grounds. So we'll continue to expand that. We are limited somewhat in terms of ONSIS and Power School reporting, but the data continues to be collected both on the suspension side and on the side of incidents that don't rise to a level of suspension, but are addressed through other means of progressive discipline. So as the report noted, we last year had about 1,085 suspensions, but we had over 3,000 incidents that were investigated and were addressed through other means, or at least 2/3 were investigated or resulted in other levels of progressive discipline.
Thank you, Trustee O'Hunchanada. Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more follow up. The suspensions that are given out per se, how many are overturned when they get to how many are appealed? And if they're appealed, how many get overturned?
Superintendent Cordero.
Through you, Mr. Chair, good question. So the 2021-22 school year, there were 888 suspensions. There were no appeals. Last year, there were 1,085 suspensions. There were no appeals. Currently this year, we have about 700-800 approximately. I'll know better in a couple of days how many suspensions to date, but about say 800 suspensions. We've had 3 appeals. None of the 3 were overturned. However, 1 was reduced in number of days.
Thank you. Superintendent Cordero. Up next is Trustee Carabella. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. I'm just going to read what it says here so that it says, we intend to further examine these results by using other student census and Statistics Canada data about income known to be confounding factors to student health, well-being, and engagement. So my question is about how do we access Statistics Canada because of privacy laws, or can you speak to that?
Dr. Collymore.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. I'm going to throw this one to Nick to answer.
Thank you. So through you, Chair, what we use typically for Statistics Canada data is the same type of data that's released publicly, but we use it at a much smaller level. And the way we typically do it is in line with how other school boards have done it. So TDSB, for example, has a long history of using it in this way, which is we take these very small, similar to a block kind of radius, and we assign data like income data using that. So if, for example, I live in a neighborhood with an income of 50,000, then that income would be attached to me. So we don't know anyone's actual individual data. We're just using StatsCan publicly available data from Statistics Canada to do that.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella.
I think I understand, so that if we see where what area they're from, we can assume a certain income. Okay, Thank you.
Go ahead.
Another question, if there's no one else. I wanted to ask about, too, I noticed that the graph with the disabilities, the persons with disability. I'm just wondering is this all disabilities and exceptionalities put together? And then would it be a benefit to categorize those a bit to see? Thank you.
Dr. Collymore?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that question. So essentially, I'm going to start, Nick, and then you can kind of jump in. With respect to breaking it down even further, we are maintaining various specific suppression rules here. And so once you start asking for additional breakdowns, what happens is you can't share the data publicly. And so these have been collapsed in order to protect everyone's privacy.
Thank you for that information. I shall now move on to Trustee Murphy. Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
You. Okay, I'm just trying to understand the frequency part. So, so is that capturing just how many times the student was suspended within that year? Are you capturing at all repeated suspensions across a child's school career?
Dr. Lamardo?
So through you, Chair, it's only through that year. So this just shows 21-22 and 22-23. Yeah.
Follow up then. With the information gathered, like to see if a child is being suspended repeatedly. I'm no statistician, but would that be more meaningful than one isolated year to see if a child is being repeatedly targeted for suspension?
Superintendent Cordero?
It may or may not. Depends for the period of time that a suspension remains in the record. There are suspensions that, upon request, can be expunged from the student's record, both the OSR file and the digital record. After 1 year of filing, there are suspensions that could be removed after 3 years upon the request of the family, and there are suspensions or expulsions that could be removed after 5 years. So depending on the numbers of suspensions that were exempt, the degree of accuracy might be difficult to determine to fully and comprehensively answer the question in the data collection that you're referring to.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. You have your answer? Or?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I see no other hands up. So, I see a hand up. Trustee Kennedy, you have the floor.
I just have a question on page 66. It mentions that there's been consultations with relevant groups to point at several factors. What groups? Could you give it any ideas of what those relevant groups are?
Dr. Lamardo?
Yeah, excuse me, absolutely. We've worked with the BSUs at the school level, as well as we presented to SEAC members for this particular group.
Thank you.
For this group, yes, those two groups, students with disabilities and, or rather SEAC, and then Black student unions.
Trustee Kennedy?
And I just have a question about overall suspensions. So the data is, the blue graph, it's number of students, suspended students, but there could be more suspensions if it's been more than once. So it went up from 680 to 852. It's a 25% increase in 1 year. Seems like a lot. Do you have have there been more issues of suspension, or why would we think it would go up 25% in 1 year?
I'll pass this to Superintendent Cordero. If at all you have an answer.
Well, yeah, I'll do the best I can. And this is anecdotal based on my observations in the role of superintendent with responsibilities of safe and accepting schools. In the 2021-22 academic year, we had about 1,200 Safe Schools Incident Reporting forms completed, submitted, and investigated by school administrators. This past year, we had over 3,000. So the operationalization of the exercise of completing the online tool, which makes it easier for staff and parents and students to submit a report or request for investigation has resulted in more investigations and higher numbers of cases resulting in suspension in that progressive discipline continuum. So that's probably the largest contributor to the rise of not only the numbers of incidents, but also the numbers of suspensions that are captured in progressive discipline.
Thank you, Superintendent Cordero. And with
Just
Trustee Kennedy?
through you, Mr. Chair, could it also be because of COVID, there was lockdown, so less interaction between students the year before then?
Superintendent Cordero?
Yeah, well, in the last year of COVID, which I think it was 2020, 2021, there were only 2 suspensions. So that speaks to you what the lived in-person experience is like compared to the virtual experience is like. I will also add, and I don't want to just I think I'm doing a disservice. We did launch the VI 102 online reporting tool through Human Rights and Equity. And then this year we expanded that tool to include incidents of bullying. So that is also capturing more incidents, more investigations, and more results in progressive discipline.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Cordero. And with that, I see Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up.
Just regarding page, say 72 or 4, I guess there's 2 numbers on the page. It said there were community members noted about disproportionalities. What community members? So we know the groups, there's the 2 groups you mentioned. Community members, how would that work?
Dr. Lombardo?
Sure. So from both groups, we did hear about difference in perceptions based on self-identities. And so it was a common feedback from both of those groups about how perception may impact suspensions.
Same group.
Pardon me?
The community members are the same group as the group above. In the same group, right?
Trustee Kennedy, could you provide some?
Yeah, so page 66, it said relevant groups. And then you mentioned there was 2 groups, SEAC and ESU, I think you said. Mm-hmm. And then on page 72, it mentioned community members. So are the community members the members of those same 2 groups? Or is it a separate group of community members?
No, it's the same groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Thank you, Dr. Collymore, Dr. Lombardo, and Superintendent Cordero for your presentation. Thanks for all the work happening behind the scene. There's a lot going on there. So with that, we shall move on to item 11.4, initiation of school name selection committee. 3 new elementary schools opening in September 2024. Superintendent Bakach, please present your report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to present this report for trustees to initiate the process of naming our 3 new elementary schools scheduled to open September 2024. And trustees have seen Superintendent Merrick's construction report, so we're well on our way. The process is in accordance with our policy I-15 school name selection. We will establish a school name selection committee for each school to review possible names and develop a priority list of at least 2 names, which will require board approval. The list of 2 names for each school will be forwarded to Bishop Douglas Crosby for review and consideration. So you'll note that there will be a school name selection committee established for Milton number 9, Milton number 10, and North Oakville number 4. The committees will be comprised of trustees and student trustees, including but not necessarily exclusive to local area representatives, the family of school superintendent, the school principal, pastor of the associated parish, and parent representatives. The committees will invite submissions of suggested names based on diocesan criteria, review possible names, develop a priority list of at least 2 names for consideration, and we shall survey local public comment, including the parents, guardians, and students who will be attending the naming school community. A staff report then will follow to update trustees regarding the school naming process and the names that will be considered. including the feedback from each of the communities, and will be brought to the board at the April 16th board meeting. And happy to take any questions that trustees may have, but also very excited to start this process for our new schools.
Thank you, Superintendent Bakaich. Trustees, do we have questions for Superintendent Bakaich? Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just how is the process then? How do trustees get notified about being able to volunteer on that committee? Thank you.
Director Klein.
Thank you. All I can say right now, Trustee Carabella, is that the policy will be followed.
Thank you. Trustees, do we have further questions for Superintendent Bakaich? Thank you, Superintendent Bakaich, for your report. These are very exciting times for us at HCDSB 3 schools. We have never had this before. It is the community who collectively decides on school names, and we would like to see some really good participation from the community in naming the schools. Side note to trustees, this should in no way be influencing the school naming in any ways. This should be something that our students, parishioners, and ratepayers in the community want. Trustees have an opportunity to select the name at the end of this process. So thank you for that. We shall now move on to item 11.5, another presentation, Math Action Plan. Superintendent Skripek, please present your report.
Hi. Probably not as exciting as the song and dance that we heard. Hopefully not as worrisome as having grab all today. I present the math action plan. There's a slide deck. I'm not sure how to. Go. So you'll remember back in October, I was here and talking about the math action plan, and we started with some goals, and I'm not able to advance. Oh, there we go. So we mirrored our plan based on what the provinces suggested as the main 3 goals in the province to ensure fidelity of curriculum implementation, engage in ongoing learning to strengthen mathematics content knowledge for teaching, and to also know the mathematics learner and ensuring mathematical tasks and interventions and supports. We've had some tremendous progress in the last couple of months, and I'll be sharing them in the next couple of slides. But before I start, I'd be remiss to not mention that, you know, we took a look at what the math plan looked like this year and compared it to what we're projecting to be our MYSP for September as approved by the trustees. And I can assure you that all of the actions in the math action plan this year match up with one of the 4 categories with an abundance in achieving, but believing, belonging, and becoming are also key action items as we look at our math plan for next year. So, sorry, the thing's just a little too big, Elizabeth. It's not fitting on the screen. In our first slide there, we're going to talk about instruction in the classroom. So at the beginning, in October, we talked about 300 minutes of mathematics instruction occurring over a 5-day cycle. We did a survey of principals to ensure that this is happening, and I'm happy to report that 100% of our principals have indicated that all teachers are teaching 300 minutes of mathematics over a 5-day cycle per PPM 160. We will be doing a resource survey with teachers to be completed by teachers and principal by the end of April. And the purpose of this resource survey is to ensure that we're hitting the right inch with the resources we have, also to understand what types of supports are needed by teachers in the classroom when it comes to implementing this, those resources. And so we're talking specifically about textbooks here, but we've also introduced a couple of new tools that we'll be talking about a little later. And we just want to make sure that all the teachers are supported and all staff that are implementing this understand how to use the tools and how we can support them further. We've also asked principals in their student achievement plans to select a very specific focus, for example, fractions or multiplication or integers, specifically for the purpose of monitoring. Oftentimes when we ask people to monitor math, it could be a very vast and deep area of research. And so sometimes if you're saying, well, we want to improve students' ability in mathematics in a certain area, I'd always suggest pick an area where we know that students may be struggling based on the data that you've already received or data that you're collecting. And more on that a little bit later about how we're finding that out. We're also asking schools in the upcoming PA Day on April the 8th, as one of the options they may have is to consider moderated marking to calibrate their assessment of students so that we have consistency across the grades and a deeper understanding of the curriculum in terms of what the rubrics look like and what we're asking for students to do. So speaking of knowing our data, Knowledge Hook is a new tool that we introduced into the board. Teachers have been using it in a variety of ways in the past, but we hadn't purchased a premium version. The province, from one source of funding, has provided us money to buy a digital literacy tool. This was on their preferred list. So we went ahead with purchasing it. We've had a number of different days of training available for teachers and administrators, introducing them to the platform. We've integrated into the online learning system, and we're encouraging principals because it does provide a tremendous ability to use data. Basically what happens with Knowledge Hook is students will complete a game-like task, but it'll give data back to the teachers and to the principal about how the students are performing on specific skill sets, which makes it far easier to collect data as opposed to having teachers mark a test and then input that data by hand and then sending it to the principal. On our next slide, we'll be talking, we'll take a look at some of the data. And what's really neat about this data is that this is from about a week ago. And on Friday, we had a PA day. So that number has changed dramatically. So credit to the math team that I have here, and Andrea Touche's our math consultant, giving me support from behind here. We're talking now about 28,000 students in Halton are now connected to Knowledge Hook, and over 1,200 teachers. So knowing that it's not available for kids in kindergarten and grade 11 and 12, I think we're hitting a target of about 100% now, which is phenomenal for us. The province has asked us to get 100% in specific grade bands, and I'm happy to say I think we're going to reach that. But continued support will be there for Knowledge Hook, and as I mentioned, we'll be doing a resource survey to make sure that we can support teachers even further. And there is a parent component to it that we're hoping to touch into a little bit later, but we want staff to be very familiar with it first. We're also using this not in isolation, but in some of the work that we're doing. I'll talk more about collaborative concept studies a little later, but we're using this for pre and post student achievement indications so that we understand the depth and scope of our work and understanding the impact on student learning. And that is coupled with what the principals are able to see, which we'll be working with principals to help them understand how they can dig deeper into this data to really understand what the student learning need is. We do have EQAO as one source of data, but we know that that's a trailing piece of information. Students write the EQAO test in June, and we don't see their data until September, and that's already for a new teacher to deal with. But with Knowledge Hook, we have the ability to start a semester or a school year off in September and get the data that we need for teachers to understand what the urgent student learning need is, where there might be gaps. And in fact, there's actually intervention materials available within Knowledge Hook that teachers can use. But we'll be working on that a little bit later. In our next slide, we'll be talking about mathology. And mathology is sounds very fancy, but it's actually an offshoot of Pearson's work that we did. We used to have Math Makes Sense, and now Pearson moved into mathology. There's a lot of lessons that are very similar to this. We introduced mathology, it actually should say 2022 for grades 1 to 6. Last year we invested in grades 7 and 8. And we have in-services for grades 7 and 8 teachers that were available. And we've included that in the scope and sequence. So scope and sequence is what we use to tell teachers or inform teachers about this would be a great way to teach math for the whole year. So they actually have a connected plan to what our system goals are and how it brings together all the different resources we have. A really neat feature of the training that teachers received was that we combined religion and math together. And teachers were invited to co-create lessons from mathology and bring an understanding, for example, of social justice teachings into the grade 7 and 8 classroom together with mathematics. And moving on, here's some of our statistics. We know that about 523 of our 704 teachers. So we say 704, that's not the total amount of teachers in our board. We're guessing it's about 1,100, but there's about 704 teachers that would actually be using a math resource because other ones are French teachers, FSL core teachers, for example, special education teachers. So they may not be using that as a classroom teacher would. So we're looking as a goal of 100%. We know that 100% of our grade 7 8 teachers have received training, and we continue to support them in their use of mathology, which we purchased to augment our existing supports, which included a resource called Math Up. So our next slide talks about the collaborative concept study. These are geared towards, the ministry's asked us to specifically focus on de-streaming this year. And we're putting a concerted effort on de-streaming in grades 7 to 9 to understand the student learning need. And further teachers' content knowledge in the area of fractions. So the part that I always say about this is we have content knowledge, which is the ability to do the math, but then you have pedagogical content knowledge, which is what a teacher needs to know for a child to learn the mathematics. And they are very different and distinct entities. So the purpose of these collaborative concept studies is to really dig deep into an area of math that we know kids struggle in, and even adults. There's plenty of research to say fractions is an area of concern, and in consultation with our department heads in our high schools, we determined fractions was one area and integers is another area that we know that kids will struggle with. So they'll come in grade 9 and they kind of have understood a little bit about integers, but when we're asking them to apply to tasks like the distributive property, all of a sudden they kind of forget what multiplying, what the rules are for multiplying with integers. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper with teachers to see how we can flesh out good supports for kids in grade 7 and 8 and how we can do some remedial work for kids in grade 9. So in these concept studies, we do leverage what Knowledge Hook can give us to collect data on our kids. Every day that we get together, we're looking at questions that we provided students and determining, how do we actually support kids in an area like this? So for example, I could say, how do we support students with addition and subtraction of integers that doesn't involve just memorizing? So we dig deep, we take a look at models that work. We take a look at different scenarios and contexts that students might understand. And we talk about some of the challenges, and sometimes we find good intervention resources that may support it further than what we already have. So we know that from the data that we collected, we're working on some student outcomes as we speak. But we also know that the vast majority of teachers said the PD was meaningful and they could use it to integrate into the classroom on a regular basis. We also know that there's some schools that participated in this whose intermediate teachers are now sharing that information that they learned with their junior and primary teachers to further the spread of the work. So as of right now, we have 8 families of schools. So when I talk about that, we have about 2 high school teachers in each session with 8 elementary teachers working together collaboratively to understand what the need is and to understand how we can move things forward. We'll also be doing 3 junior mathematics concept studies in the area of multiplication, which we also know to be an area of concern and an area that we know can carry forward a student's learning well into their high school career plus adulthood. Next, we have communicating with families. So we're making a considered effort to ensure that our families know what we're doing in mathematics. 10 schools have thus far hosted a family math night or a STEAM night across the district. We also have presentations happening next month. So a far more interactive and engaging presentation, because I figured today would be like, you didn't want to do any math too much, but you're welcome to attend the CPIC sessions. We'll be doing a lot of interactive work with parents to help them understand the resources we're providing and how they could leverage that with their own kids at home. Lots of excitement, lots of great practice, and lots of game show type strategies. And you may even see me do some hosting there. Schools continue to have access to system level staff in order to help and organize their family math nights. And we're also updating our board website to indicate what the math plan looks like for this year. And I would be remiss to also not mention that we did present to SEAC in October to talk about mathematics and how we support it in our board. So EQAO, we write EQAO twice for grade 9 students, once in January, once in June. Each student only writes it once, but there's 2 writing sessions because we have 2 semesters. So our grade 9 students have just finished writing their grade 9 EQAO assessments. Data was shared with parents. We don't have access to that data yet because it's under suppression until September. Although I would eagerly try to like sift through every single paper if I could, but I can't. So the individual students' results were shared with the parents and students. EQAO provides sample questions, sample problems that we could use with teachers, which we've shared. We created a system level committee this year also to ensure that we can streamline the EQAO processes and support communication. We also need to do that just in case there's a technical problem with the implementation at the school level. As you know, EQAO now is an online tool. It's not a written tool. So we always want to make sure that we have everything ready to go on a day that they're writing and there is no technological meltdown. We have also integrated EQAO questions, and Knowledge Hook has done this for us as well, into Knowledge Hook to help with some of the prep that kids may need or require. It helps that if it's a technological tool, that students have some experience in using that type of tool when it comes to an assessment like EQAO. And we've supported schools in integrating their EQAO data, which was released at the end of September, into their student achievement plans for the purposes of goal setting. So on our next slide, we kind of have a timeline of where we're at. Know that the next window for writing will be May the 8th to June the 12th. That's when students, and I'm not mentioning OSSLT here, but I am talking about the reading, writing, and mathematics for primary and junior. And then in grade 9, they've got a window from Wednesday, May the 29th to the end of June. So students are welcome to, schools will plan ahead and organize these dates. They'll share it with us and we'll make sure we have a team ready to support with the implementation as we see fit. And moving forward into the EQAO Data Analysis Partnership. This is particularly exciting because we have at our disposal already student census data, and EQAO has taken a keen interest in what our research team, which they're great. Just ask me, I'll tell you all the great things they do for me all the time. They've taken our student census data and analyzed our data and compared it to see if there's any disproportionality. There was a report given to the board of trustees last year in May. One way that we used it this year was to determine what types of tutoring supports and decisions we need to make, and decisions about the intervention program that we use, do the math, and how we would implement that. The data was very meaningful and relevant, and we were able to use it to our full extent, thanks to the hard work of research and thanks to having tools like that. So moving right along here. We have this month is Black History Month, so the STEAM team and our de-streaming itinerants, who have a lot to do with the implementation of mathematics, created an amazing resource for a gentleman called Benjamin Banneker. He was a Black American, self-taught. So, you know, to credit to his abilities, he created a wooden clock that he actually carved out with a pocket knife. It actually worked. It wasn't destroyed until there was a fire in his house sometime in the early 19th century. And he was also the person, why it's even more relevant, in 1789, he accurately predicted a solar eclipse. using mathematical calculations. So we're eager to share that information with students across the board. Classes will have a chance to participate. Interestingly enough, we delayed the release of this until about this week, and mainly because we wanted to, in consultation with our Human Rights and Equity team, move a Black History initiative beyond just Black History Month and share this information with students in a month, like use it in March and April as well. So it's being released this week. Kids will have a chance to construct a clock, understand how the solar eclipses work and how mathematics kind of time into that. And they'll be having plenty of fun, but we will include safety lessons in this, rest assured. The Caribou Math Contest is another investment that we did with our digital literacy tool, our digital tool. Students have been participating since October. We kind of have a friendly battle going on between Holy Trinity and Loyola. They both traded punches with each other to become the first in the province in achievement for our schools. Out of 31 schools, we were first twice, just saying. We've also had a number of students who are achieving in probably the top 5% of the world, both out of Loyola and Holy Trinity, and we're actively encouraging other schools to participate. We also know that there's a number of elementary schools that are doing a great job of integrating this. I can always say that initially this starts off with a great deal of keen interest on students' parts, and then they kind of see that it's a little bit harder than their day-to-day mathematics, so they either feel like I love this stuff or I made a drop off. I'll let you figure out where I would have fit into there. But we know that this is a tool that we're trying to continue to encourage students to use, and it could be used as easy as, that you can play games on the tool, or you could become a little bit more competitive and feel like you can participate in the contest. But we do open up this contest to all students. We don't want to limit anybody's abilities or feelings about math, and we want to celebrate when students get a 5 out of 15 and they get a 7 out of 15 the next time. We know that they're doing better, and we want them to continue to see different ways of using mathematics on a day-to-day basis. And parents and students have the ability to see their results all the time. So here's a little bit of a timeline on that next slide, just to tell you where we're at and the participation levels. I can probably predict in January that secondary students, as they're preparing for their exams, are not as interested in getting ready for EQAO, for Caribou Math. But we're hoping for a slight uptick from last week to take a look at the data. And our last one will be May the 1st and 2nd. Eager to share more results with you. So moving right along, we are participating as a board, or continuing to participate with the AIM Collective. This is a collective across the province. Researchers that get together and talk about probably my favorite topic, which is mathematics, if you wouldn't have guessed. And we're trying to work together to create a digital numeracy screener. Right now it's in paper form, and it's geared towards our kindergarten students. So much like we're trying to do some screening for early reading, we're also trying to create a similar screener for numeracy to understand where our students are and understand who might be requiring interventions at a very early age, because we know that the early stages of mathematics learning can create some very amazing outcomes for students at a later time in their lives. So this will be, we're gearing towards 2025 to have the full numeracy screener in its digital form. And then next we've got the Do the Math. Now this is, you don't want to play favorites, but I really have enjoyed this one in particular. We had 80 students participating in intervention. It was fantastic that our special education team recommended this last year as a tool to use. And thanks to the research team, we were able to get great data that told us it was working, but we were using it for grades 1 to 6. But what we noticed was that it was having a tremendous impact on student learning. And so we thought we'd try it out with our grade 7 students this year. Some phenomenal data came back, and some of it we'll be using moving forward as a school board to try to think about how we could leverage more of this resource, because what we saw was a tool that would typically take 30 to 40 minutes to use with a small group. At a grade 7 level, we noticed that it wasn't taking as long. And yet we're getting the same outcomes that we had from our special education team last year. And we noticed that there was a definitive increase in student confidence in their abilities in mathematics, which is tremendous to know that even in grade 7, we can still do good intervention work with students, and that we can make them feel better about how they feel about mathematics. And in the next slide, I'll kind of share some of the data that we have. Don't worry, I replaced their names. And, you know, if you look deeper, you'll see some Star Wars references in there. We did pre and post diagnostic data, and we saw tremendous outcomes for our kids. Students, as you can see, some students came to us at a 30% level and are leaving at 100% level. This is testament to the hard work of the team, but also testament to the hard work of the kids. We're excited about this. Like this isn't a silver bullet, I have to say, but we know that the interventions that we did here were specifically in the area of multiplication. We know that it does have an impact on kids, how they understand multiplication, how they use it in mathematics, does have a tremendous impact on them later on, much like fractions. So it's a great intervention to use, but we're also seeing good results in our kids. And as I said, the feedback that we're getting from teachers in the classroom who weren't implementing it, but getting they're the end recipients of it from their students, are noticing that the kids are coming back even more excited about being in math class. So we're hoping to extend and expand this program in the near term future and talk about how we can do that in a more meaningful way for system implementation. That's all the excitement I have for you today. Happy to take any questions about this.
Thank you, Superintendent Skripek. Trustees, do we have questions for or comments for Superintendent Skripek? Trustee Ohanchanada, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair and Superintendent Skripek. Your passion for math is bar none. Honest to goodness, like I wasn't that exhilarated about math this afternoon when I came in here. Now I am. Now I'm going to go home and do math. So thank you, and I'm glad you're with our board. I'm glad you're here with us, and I think the students and the staff are very glad you're here with us. So well done, really well done.
Thank you, Trustee Ohanchanada. Trustee McGuire.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. It was super interesting. I'll be thinking about it as I do my math homework tonight. I just had a question about modified marking. I was just wondering what it is, if you could explain a little bit of what that means.
Superintendent Skripek.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm trying to think of modified. There's a lot of different. Oh, moderated mark. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay, moderated. Yes. Okay. So moderated markings when teachers get together and they take a look at one piece of work. So you can get a fractions test, for example, bring it to the table and say, okay, everybody, let's take a look at this test and let's understand or we could take a look at a different piece of work, like a problem, and understand what does the student know? What is the student telling us about what they don't know from the answer, and what would we do better? And sometimes from that moderation, you may actually see, oh, well, I'm not quite sure what they said here. So how about we take a look at the research and understand more about what this means for the student and what we'd actually do next for them. From the research that we have about teacher professional learning, this is probably bar none one of the best ways that professional learning can happen. It's at the desk, based on student learning need, based on teacher learning need later on, and very collaborative in nature.
Thank you, Trustee McGuire. Any follow-up?
No, thank you. Okay. That's a really cool idea.
Thank you. Up next, Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through you. I just have a question about the de-streaming team. Like, I don't know much about that. Can you explain that to me a little bit more? How many people are part of it, and how often are they in the schools, that sort of thing?
Superintendent Skripek.
Absolutely. So in previous years, the ministry would have given us funds called Renewed Math Strategy. They would have given us money that's enveloped specifically for math intervention. This year, they provided us quite a bit of money for de-streaming itinerants. And those are teachers that are not in the classroom supporting the good work in grade 7, 8, and 9 right now. We have 5 de-streaming itinerants that are grade 7 and 8 focused, and 2 de-streaming itinerants that are grade 9 and 10 focused. The 9 and 10 teachers have vast experience in high school, The 7 and 8 teachers have vast experience in elementary. The de-streaming itinerants are not solely focused on mathematics, but I tend to use them quite a bit. So I would say the ratio is about 75% mathematics and 25% subjects like language. Knowing and recognizing that there's a new language curriculum, we know that there is some work that also needs to be done in grades 7 and 8 because the curriculum was changed from grades 1 to 8 entirely. This team works together and cohesively to implement the math plan in its entirety. So we sit together quite a bit. When it comes to, for example, the collaborative concept study, they've met with department heads. We meet together. We plan and design the professional development the teachers will be using on a regular basis. They're in the classrooms. One of their main roles the last 2 months was actually implementing Do the Math in those classrooms. So I would say they're in the classroom 4 times a week in the last 2 months. Right now, because they're leading the collaborative concept studies across the board, they'll be in different schools probably 3 or 4 times a week. And then they get together on Fridays, which is their planning day, where they get together and they talk about what they're doing and how to implement next steps and what we should be doing next. The other part of their role, because it's never just one thing, and I warned them it's a busy year, they're also supporting principals at their schools. So they're assigned a family of schools to support. And if the principal needs any support for their intermediate division, they'd be there for whatever purpose that principal may need them. And sometimes they do some work at the end of the day to help with staff meetings at the end of the day. Or, as I said, to kind of help out with family math nights.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy.
I have a follow-up. Is that
Go ahead.
okay? So I'm just, that's great. That really helps me understand it, but I'm trying to understand why they're called de-streaming itinerants. Can you just explain that to me?
Their funding comes from the, sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Chair. Their funding comes from the de-streaming initiative. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, the province has really put a big focus this year on de-streaming. So the funding tended to really gravitate this year right into grade 7, 8, and 9. So their main role is to help kids in grade 7 and 8 transition into high school. And knowing that the province has changed all grade 9 now into a de-stream session, the province is asking us to make sure that we're preparing students as well as possible to move into a grade 9 classroom, where typically in grade 9 we would have asked them to go into applied or academic. Now we're asking them to go into a de-streamed classroom. So we want to make sure that all the interventions are in place and as much support for teachers as available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So there seems to be like many digital format tools for math that's happening. So I'd like, because I have 2 questions, is like, how are you seeing kids learning through the digital format versus pen and paper, or right? And then with that, also like how much in a classroom of math instruction would be digital, would be pen and paper or chalkboard or whatever they use? Thank you.
Superintendent Skripek. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think the first question is really a question of teacher comfort. I can't speak to every individual teacher's comfort level with wanting to use digital versus pencil and paper. I could probably tell you that most math classes you go into continue to be pencil and paper or conversation, as opposed to just a digital tool. Some of it is limited by how much access to technology the students may have. I would hazard to say that I wouldn't see many classes where it's only a digital. Of the tools we use, they're accessible through the internet, but many of them involve printing off a sheet for kids or having something available to them. We always are, and we continue to review our resources to make sure we're hitting the best, we're hitting all students in the best way possible. And that's part of what the resource survey is about this year too, is to make sure that the resources we have selected are meeting the kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee
Very
Carabella.
good. Thank you.
Follow?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Trustee Kennedy. You have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. For Knowledge Hook, is that, I mean, you probably mentioned, I missed it. Is it only certain grades? It says there's 19,000 students. Is that for all grades from a 3 up, or?
So the exciting part for us, I'll answer the first question. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Our target audience is grades 1 to 12. The province asked us to target grades 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But given the funding model that we had and the ability to expand it, it only made sense to go from grades 1 to 12 because they weren't asking us for much more money to expand it. We now have, based on the Friday on Friday's PA day, we actually saw a spike because that was our PA day for elementary teachers. It was the first chance we had to actually in-service them on Knowledge Hook. We now have 28,000 students and 1,200 teachers. So it's a modification. I just looked online today. And I would say at that point, I think we're at the saturation point. Kindergarten teachers don't have access to the tool, and it's not really designed for grade 11 and 12. They don't have questions geared towards grade 11 and 12. So really we're thinking grades 1 to 10, we're pretty close to 100% now. Given the numbers, I don't have all the math in my head, but I think it's pretty accurate.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
So it says, so you're saying on PA Day, more people went on Knowledge Hook than video games? Like it was a pickup on PA Day? Is that, you said like people were doing Knowledge Hook on PA Day? Or teachers? Teachers.
The teachers put their student, on Friday was the first time we had elementary teachers formally trained on it.
Okay.
So the teachers then had an opportunity to sign up all their students. Prior to that, it was kind of a piecemeal. So as Trustee Murphy asked about de-streaming itinerants, that would have been one of their roles. They would have went into schools, and some schools said, we really want to start with Knowledge Hook earlier, can we? And I'm not one to say no to anybody who wants to do extra math stuff. So said that, all right, if we have the capacity and the time, we're absolutely ready to come and support already. But for the bulk of the teachers and bulk of the system, it was this PA Day was the first opportunity we had, so we leveraged it. And the good news is, I think it was quite successful based on the data we're seeing that we have pretty good implementation, and further supports will be provided for it in the months and years to come.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So so teachers have to be registered on Knowledge Hook for the students to go on there, or can students go on if the teacher is not? It says there's 737 on Knowledge Hook. But if there's a teacher that's not and a student wants to, because they find out about it, can they go on there?
Mr. Chair, my experience has been, I don't think a kid can sign up. They could get on probably for free, but what we're offering is bigger, and a parent just needs to ask. So, you know, every teacher now has access to it, and they are probably using it based on what we're seeing right now. So that's now 1,200 teachers, not 700. Because of that PA Day. So I suspect all students are now able to and available to actively register. As I said, like the CPIC presentation will have an interactive component, and I'll kind of show parents, this is what you can expect to see. Just to give you a quick synopsis of it, there's a game show that teachers can use, a quiz opportunity for kids to do. We could use it for pre and post, but then there's also opportunities, and Mr. Chair, I think I exposed you to it, where if a student just wants to keep moving ahead, they can actually go into a practice session, and then there's a series of just practice questions that they could do with kids. We know that there's an individualized PD program baked into the program too. It's called a mission. So a teacher can assign this mission and kind of see, where are my kids at right now? And use that data to then figure out, and there's information that goes to the teacher about, here's some good interventions you could do with your student, and then it'll spit out a post data analysis as well to tell them what the growth was for students. So to answer your question, number one, yes, I would suspect all kids now have access through their teacher, but if they don't, then they're welcome to email the teacher, and their teacher will get any support that they need, including from a de-streaming itinerant, to help implement the tool in their classroom.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So key performance indicators, I see there's caribou contests, and you have like a timeline.
Yes.
Is it just based more for caribou for elementary, because there's a significant amount more of elementary than secondary? And so, and what's the indicator? Is it getting more people in the contest, or is there like the result of the contest?
Superintendent Skripek.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The key performance indicator will actually come in about April, where we'll be asking students about their engagement level with mathematics and how they feel about it. The high school challenge, I believe in January in particular, like it is open. It's a contest for grades 1 to 12. But the challenge is, I believe, especially as we get into our senior grades, kids that are much more fixated on mathematics will gravitate to this. Kids who are not feeling like they want to move into a field of mathematics, or they kind of feel like they want to put their focus and attention elsewhere, may not participate. What I suspect in January, I don't have all the data at my fingertips, but January is exam month, and I don't think many people are that interested in doing a math contest, unless you're related to me. They're not that excited about doing a math contest in January. So I'm hoping in February 14th and 15th, we might have seen a bigger uptick. But there is an engagement, there isn't a mandate for kids to use this tool. So we're continuing to analyze the effect on our students and their feeling of success.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy?
Just the last one. So is there an overall key performance indicator from like, as part of the new act from the ministry, like they want to see EQA go up? Is there some sort of measurable guide at the end that they want to see with all the new Knowledge Hook and all the different programs at Caribou that they're looking for an increase in some area at a certain grade level? Or
Superintendent Skripek? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. Absolutely. So two key indicators that they're always looking for is a change in student learning or a change in teacher practice. And we're analyzing both in the work that we do. So if we're not seeing that, then we're always thinking about how we can do things better or differently. And if we are seeing it, then as you saw in Do the Math, then we say, what can we do to make this even more scalable and even more effective? So we tend to really gravitate towards those two key content areas. Key performance indicators are being tracked as part of this math plan, and I'll have far more data for you in May, mainly because I kind of call this the Olympics time of our professional development, where this is from February till April. This is a key time for teachers. They've known their kids for a while. They have a little bit of an easier time being able to do professional development. So there's quite a bit going on right now. And I'll be able to share, you'll get to see me one more time for sure. May or June, depending on the timing. That's when I'll share some of the data with you about where we're at and how our initiatives succeeded.
Thank you. We had a lot of questions from trustees, and thank you for that update, Superintendent Skripek. My comment is we are doing it right here, and we are on the right trajectory. With the use of the various tools, Knowledge Hook and Mathology, and engaging families. We're engaging families. We are thinking about EQA and preparing for that competitions, Caribou and all the other competitions. And we are tracking our progress. And all this is linked to our multi-strategic plan, with the new multi-strategic plan of achieving, believing, belonging, and becoming. So thank you for the work done, and we'll look forward to your report. You said May?
I believe it's the beginning of June.
We'll note it down, yes. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much.
We now move on to our next order of business, which is miscellaneous information. 12.1, student trustee update. Student trustees, please present your report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, we do have a packed report for tonight. Lots of updates. I will begin with the achieving section. On February 8 to 11, we had the opportunity to attend the Education Action Conference hosted by the Ontario Student Trustees Association. As the name suggests, this conference had various professional development sessions that were geared towards taking our education about our roles in the board and putting action towards it, which supports students in our board. This included, but was not limited to, keynote speakers from valuable provincial education associations, skill building workshops that we participated in, working groups, a chance to meet our student trustee alumni, and more. Some of our speakers included Annie Kidder, the Executive Director of People for Education, and Joseph Geiser, the Executive Director of CPCO. Trustee Chua and I also attended the networking style workshop, while Trustee McGuire attended the brand craft workshop. Additionally, we're also proud to inform you that Trustee McGuire and I presented at OSTA Talks, which is basically a session aiming to present major board initiatives at the provincial level. During this session, we were happy to talk about our upcoming board-wide elementary student senate pilot program and gain some feedback from school board student trustees who already have this plan at their respective boards. Furthermore, as members of OSTA, we also participated in advocacy interest groups, specifically focusing on curriculum and school community, truth and reconciliation, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. We are currently working on some provincial initiatives that aim to benefit student trustees and their representation of students across the province. We will have some updates in the near future. So we would like to thank OSTA ACO for this wonderful conference, especially the executive team, our fellow Catholic and public education interest group members, and all their student trustees for a valuable experience in student leadership. We also had our student senate meeting a few weeks ago where we were able to gain some student feedback about our initiative, the Elementary Senate Pilot Program, as well as conduct a mid-year reflection to gain insight into the senators' experience working in their roles throughout the first semester. We gathered some useful information regarding various aspects of student achievement, including opportunities for leadership, especially within minority groups at schools, incorporating AI tools into education, breaking barriers towards equity, and more. So we're looking to take a look at that data that we've gathered and to implement possible initiatives that will support our students. And I will pass that on to Trustee Chua, who will be taking care of the believing section.
Thank you so much, Student Trustee Deepu. So the believing section is our Catholic education, as we know, is the main cornerstone of our student success within our Catholic school boards, especially here within Halton Catholic. So during our OSTA ACO Education Action Conference, as Trustee Deepu highlighted, last week in Ottawa, we were able to engage in insightful professional development to help bolster our roles as student trustees within our board. During our Catholic Education Interest Group sessions, we met with Development and Peace to learn more about peasant farms in South America and how North America and first world countries across the globe are some of the main contributors to the problem as we continue to neglect climate change and support fast fashion within our everyday lives. This is an issue that not only affects the thousands of family farms that are being obliterated, but also affects every single one of us across our global community. Furthermore, we also met with Joseph Geiser, the Executive Director of the Catholic Principals Council of Ontario, to discuss what issues that affect students, teachers, and administrators in unison, and how we can collectively, as an entire body, help support and enhance the quality of our education in our schools throughout its various levels. Subsequently, in light of the quickly upcoming Catholic Education Week, as Director Klein highlighted in his wonderful report in this May, the Catholic Education Interest Group began the creation of our annual Catholic Education Week video following this year's theme, We Are Called to Love. The Catholic Education Interest Group created short skits following the sub-themes of hope, faith, mercy, justice, and joy that will be edited and clipped together to create a final video that will come out on the OSTA ACO Instagram and the OCSTA website during Catholic Education Week in May. And now I'll pass it on to Trustee McGuire for our final belonging section.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So part of my report is talking about all the wonderful initiatives we have happening at Black History Month as we hope to honor and celebrate the contributions of Black individuals within Halton, in Canada, and throughout the world. One of the initiatives that we're very proud of is the Envision Conference held at my school, St. Ignatius of Loyola, which was hosted by the Loyola Black Student Association and the Loyola Student Council, which saw 4 Black professionals coming to Loyola for the day to do different panels, breakout discussions, and other activities that are centered specifically around career development and what it means to enter the workforce as a Black person. Students were incredibly satisfied with this conference, and we appreciate all the efforts that were made by the administration, Student Council, and Black Student Association to make this possible. I'll also just touch, I included the Black Education Excellence Symposium, because it was such a hit among students. I heard so many wonderful things, but students are very excited to participate in the symposium, and they really want it to continue for years to come. Also, too, I appreciate that our board is committed to acknowledging Black excellence outside of Black History Month. It's really important that we do this consistently so that Black students always feel that their history and that they're feeling that are constantly included throughout the year within our board. Also, too, at our Education Action Conference, we had many opportunities for professional development regarding to in regards to equity and inclusion. Student trustee Chua participated in a sexual assault awareness and prevention training with the Equity Inclusion Advisory interest group, which was facilitated by Carleton University Sexual Assault Support Center, teaching students about consent education and its importance to prevent sexual assault. We also learned about education privatization through a World Cafe session with our Public Education Exchange, or PEX, and discuss this issue, why it's harmful to equity within our public education system, and how as student trustees we could approach fixing this issue. Overall, we are very grateful that the HCDSB allows us to attend these conferences. As you can see, we gain so much insight and ideas on how to conduct our advocacy as student trustees, and we strongly believe that these supports allow us to become better advocates for students. So thank you for your support of our development and growth. Thank you.
Thank you, student trustees. Trustees, we have questions for our students? Seeing none, I want to thank all three of you for your report and bring student voice once again to our table. Thank you so much for that. We shall now move on to item 12.2 OCSTA update. Trustee Ohan Chanada, do you have an update?
I do. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick verbal update. Just a reminder that coming up on May the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is our annual, excuse me, AGM, where our resolutions will be brought forward. They'll be voting for new president, past, and vice president for OXTA. So if you haven't signed up, I please ask you to please sign up. It's a very good event, and you know, it helps support us as a board with those resolutions that we've all put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ohan Chanada. Any questions for Trustee Ohan Chanada? I'll just add one more thing. In the agenda package is an item, the noted items for election of the director of OCSTA for our region. So elections will be next board meeting. So it's information is in the board package. Thank you so much for that. We shall now move on to item number 13, correspondences. We do not have correspondences that meet the requirement. We shall now move on to open question period. Director Klein, do you have any questions submitted?
No, we don't, Chair.
Thank you, Director Klein. Next order of business is in camera. We do not have to go in camera. And we move on to resolution regarding absentees. We have all trustees, we have all trustees present today, so we do not need a resolution. And we move on to adjournment and closing prayer. May I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Saunders moves. Looking for a seconder. Trustee Carabella. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Trustee Kennedy, please lead us in the closing prayer.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, you remained faithful to your mission of fasting and praying for 40 days. You pressed on to the end of that time and endured much. When you emerged, you announced that the time of fulfillment had arrived. Please give us your strength and grace to persevere through the challenges in life. Jesus, we trust in you. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Thank you, everyone, for a great meeting.